space Pope reptilian.
Okay, so this is Slate.com, and the headline here: Pope Francis's response to Ukraine has tapped into one of Catholicism's deepest conspiracy theories. And I thought, whoa, what are they talking about? And, you know, this is something we covered in the last episode about Pope Francis consecrating Russia and you know, doing a whole prayer, you know, the connection to Fatima and the UFO stuff there. And so Slate decided to do a long piece on it. I don't want to read the whole thing, but I'll read a little bit here. It says, to the average person, the responses about the Vatican announcing Pope Francis, you know, doing the prayer for Russia and Ukraine, seem nearly impossible to decipher. Quote, Holy Father, I am a little bit worried, one person wrote on Twitter. Quote, this won't be a legitimate consecration either. Another scoffed. Quote, only idiots think this Freemason will do the consecration, said another.
Wow.
Quote, it's about time, but what took so long, one asked. I like how they just collect random Twitter quotes, and that's like the lead hook, you know, bringing people into the story. Others pointed to blog posts and videos that warned the Pope's plan amounted to a globalist trap, or that, quote, an anti-Pope's consecration of Russia would lead to dire consequences. What in the world was happening here? Wouldn't you like to know? The Pope's announcement had tapped into one of the strangest and most heated debates in Catholicism, one that involves speculation about body doubles and forgeries, prophecies and visions of hell, secret messages, 2 global wars, the attempted assassination of a pope, and above all, the Virgin Mary. So, see, this is what's interesting. I didn't realize that, like, even within Catholicism, there's a divide and conquer kind of thing going on. And so when they say conspiracy theorist in this title, they're not talking about people like us. There's a very specific group of people they're talking about. Oh. So it goes into the whole Mary apparition, the Fatima thing that we talked about. Mm-hmm. And you know,
for those who might just be tuning in,
sure,
it was you know, just give a quick rundown.
Okay, so in 1917, there was a
long time ago,
over 100 years ago, there was some girls in Portugal, young ladies, who received visions from Mother Mary, and then the rumor got out. People started, you know, forming crowds when allegedly, you know, certain apparitions were supposed to appear according to the girls, and then in one of the gatherings was what we would interpret today as more of a UFO sighting, a spinning disc in the air, heat coming off of it, things like that. So, but at the time, because it was before the flying saucer phenomenon had hit mainstream culture, they talked about a spinning sun and things of that nature. So that's what happened. And then Lucia, which means light, one of the women, the 3 children, or I guess girls, one of the 3 girls, wrote down the prophecies. And this is where all the disagreements start coming out about what actually happened afterwards and what the Vatican, you know, their response to it and everything else. So that's where
there was talk that it was a mass hallucination.
Right.
There was talk, was it a real miracle? Was it this? Was it that? Right.
According to Lucia, Mary visited her again in 1929, repeating the request about the consecration of Russia. Quote, the moment has come in which God asks the Holy Father in union with all the bishops of the world to make the consecration of Russia to my immaculate heart, promising to save it by this means, end quote. That's allegedly, that's Mary there, the spirit. Allegedly. Mm-hmm. Without getting too deep into the theological meaning of a consecration, here's akin to a dedication, setting aside a person or thing, or even a concept for a holy purpose. Sister Lucia's prophecies were taken seriously by the Church, while the Vatican has maintained that the terrible war in the second secret referred to World War II. It also saw in the Revelation, quote, the prediction of the immense damage that Russia would do to humanity by abandoning the Christian faith and embracing communist totalitarianism, end quote. Over the decades, a number of popes have tried to stave off or resolve international conflict by invoking Mary's protection. In 1942, Pope Pius VII consecrated the world to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and then just 1952, and then 1964, 81, 82, 84. So they've done it multiple times. The last consecration in 1984 conducted in St. Peter's Square in Rome on behalf of the entire human race. Naming Russia specifically would have been politically dangerous and, quote, in spiritual union with all the bishops of the world is considered the one that officially fulfilled Mary's request for her vision at Fatima. In 2000, during the momentous revelation of the third secret, so apparently there was a third secret in the year 2000, Rome revealed that Sister Lucia, in a handwritten letter in 1989, had assured the Pope that the consecration had been accepted in heaven. That, according to the Vatican, was the resolution of the second secret from 1929. The Cold War ended, communism fell, and Mikhail Gorbachev publicly embraced the Orthodox Church. So, according to the Vatican, this whole the Fatima thing was fulfilled. It's done. It was done with the whole Cold War ending in the 80s or early 90s. But that was not the end of the story. Many traditionalists who believe the Catholic Church has betrayed its identity by softening and liberalizing to adjust to the modern world became enamored with the revelations and questioned the official Vatican line. How could it be, they reasoned, that the 1984 consecration had satisfied Mary's request when the Pope didn't specifically mention Russia? And the previous consecration that had mentioned the country had surely failed because they had neglected to secure the cooperation of, quote, all the bishops of the world. So again, it's like these technicalities of these inter-Catholic debate that's taking place.
Well, that is pretty characteristic of the Catholic Church, like throughout history.
Yeah, it's their own divide and conquer methodology from within.
Yeah, it's a very interesting sort of bureaucracy that goes on to sort of decide what is and isn't
part of the doctrine or part of canon.
Yeah, it's not even doctrine, not even canon, just like the description of reality.
Sure.
I mean, you talk about miracles and things like that, they go through years and sometimes decades of bureaucracy to decide if something was or was not a miracle.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not even, I don't even care much about their sort of government structure of the Catholic Church, but they have a same bureaucracy for just explaining an event that happened once.
Right.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, okay. It gets into a couple more things here. So, quote, there's a subset of Catholics who are really into Fatima, said Mike Lewis, a managing editor of the pro-Francis blog, Where Peter Is. Quote, it's sanctioned by the church, but the message is very apocalyptic, so traditionalists love it. Children seeing a vision of hell, it comes off as fire and brimstone. It's been fodder for conspiracy theorists ever since the 60s. According to Lewis, only a tiny percentage, maybe 3 to 5% of the 50 million Catholics in the U.S. even know about the Fatima debates. Quote,
yeah, that's true.
But it's a key 3%, he said. Quote, they follow Catholic news. They want to know what's going on in the Vatican, are diehards for apparitions. I like that. Diehards for apparitions. These Catholics. And they're seminarians, young priests. This stuff is preached from the pulpit. And then it gets into 2017 stuff. There's a whole timeline. And then let me skip down to some other parts here. So why would Francis do this? Let's get to the meat of it. There's been some speculation that the announcement has to do with his own efforts to quiet the radical traditionalists in the church. Quote, it is a rare case where he's being applauded by the traditionalist right, and so that's a good thing in one sense, said David Gibson, the director of the Center on Religion and Culture at Fordham University. Quote, in some ways, this can be read as the Pope throwing a bone to conservatives, but that strategy is doomed to fail. Conspiracy theorists will always find something to feed the conspiracy, and sure enough, opponents of Francis have already started finding issues with the Pope's approach. They claim that naming Ukraine negates the process, or that all bishops won't actually participate, or any number of other things. So it seems unlikely that Francis is doing this entirely for internal political reasons. There's another theory that Francis really believes in this rite and in the secrets of Fatima. Let me skip down. Despite the fact that the Vatican in its consecration announcement explicitly mentions Fatima, Gibson says Francis hasn't bought into the conspiracy theorists' arguments. Quote, he does not see these consecrations as magic, where you need to recite these words perfectly every time, he said. Instead, Gibson said, Francis likely sees the consecration as something to adapt to different geopolitical situations to call on Mary's support. Quote, this is something where you can do these kinds of prayers again and again. Gibson had one more theory about the Francis consecration, one that assumes the Vatican is more aware of the theories than it lets on. Quote, in a way, the Pope's taking back Fatima. And this idea of consecration from the conspiracy theorists, he said, who have, quote, owned it for more than a century. And this is an effort to say, no, this is not some crazy apocalyptic thing. This is standard Catholic practice. End quote.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. May I comment?
Yeah, go for it.
So there's something very interesting here. They're sort of what they're calling conspiracy theorists is really not even a great term for what they're talking about. What they're really talking about are fundamentalists.
Yes.
They're talking about Catholic fundamentalists who, believe the sort of literal interpretation of not just the Bible or whatever, but the event, the Fatima event. And they believe that the prophecy foretold there was, literally for a moment, for a thing, an act of God in the world, and, meant something very specific. What the Pope is doing, which is actually very common in the Catholic Church, is using the event of Fatima as a repeatable tool, this consecration. So, it reminds me of the conversation a little bit that goes back and forth, more particularly in the Protestant traditions where, who was it? Was it Paul that prayed over rags? And then the rags got sent out to people who were sick all over the place, and they got healed when the rag was put on them. Are you aware of this Bible?
I don't. Was it Paul?
I'm trying to remember. Can you Google it? I believe it was Paul.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it.
And
is it the rag or the cloth?
Yeah, rag or the cloth.
Right,
and it was So I believe it was Paul. I will be corrected in a moment if it wasn't.
The chat might be more familiar. Yeah,
yes,
it's Paul.
I'm being told it was Paul. Yeah. So there's people. He's sort of working in an apostolic position there. Yeah. He's praying over pieces of cloth, and then people are taking those pieces of cloth out to the people, across the land who are sick, and the cloth gets laid on them, and it heals them. Okay, so this is in the Bible. It's in Acts. Now, there's big debate in Protestants whether this is descriptive or prescriptive. Was this describing something that happened, or is it prescribing something that we can all do anytime we want?
Yeah, let's get some holy rags.
Yeah, and that's pretty much just what the Pope is doing here. He's taking Fatima and saying, no, it's not just a description of something that happened, but it's a prescription. It's God telling us that, oh yeah, we can just consecrate Russia whenever we want. It's just like a tool we have now.
It's a methodology.
Yeah. So, and it can get it can be put in even more sort of sinister words, as if, perhaps it is a spell that can be wielded at any moment whenever the Pope needs it to be so, or just back to that sort of standard thing. But, and that's not to pick on the Catholics and the popes in particular, because the charismatic versus non-charismatic debate goes that same way. If you don't believe that was prescriptive, and you got charismatics who are, praying over cloth today and sending it out, you might think the same thing, that they're operating in some sort of witchcraft or something. Certainly not a debate we're going to have right now, but that's just the state of the world we're in. So this is actually a very relatable situation, if you ask me.
Yeah. I just the interesting part, and I guess the mainstream media takeaway, is that they use the phrase conspiracy theorist.
Right, which is the wrong word.
Yeah.
They're fundamentalists. But isn't that so funny? Because that's exactly what the Protestants get to here in America.
Yep.
You know, if you're a fundamentalist Christian, that means, I mean, you're pretty much synonymous with a crazy conspiracy theorist.
Yep.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen some breaking news stuff, which is interesting, but not like super important. So
you
we can
want
cover
to
it
just
later.
mention it as something to mention before we go into the break here?
We can mention it. Apparently,
Mention
Toronto is rolling out human trials for male birth control pills. 99% efficacy.
Oh, that's very effective.
That, I mean, can we get more eugenics than that?
If the ladies are taking pills, the men can take pills too. I don't have a problem with that.
All right.
I mean, I'm not telling anybody to go take pills, but hey, the ladies have been taking those pills for decades.
Yep. You know who's not taking pills? Catholics.
How about we just get rid of the pills? Yeah, how about that?
Yeah.
Stop messing with people's hormones. Oh my gosh. Have you gone down the rabbit hole of how the birth control pill has basically shaped our entire society through constant hormone control imbalance of females?
Yeah.
Because the birth control pill tricks their body into thinking that they're already pregnant,
right?
Which works as good birth control, but also puts their brain chemicals in the nesting phase, and the romantic phases of it. So you've got a whole you've got multiple generations of women who some of these women have been on birth control since they were very young, who basically their whole life is a lie that has been sort of controlled chemically through these pills. They marry people that they never would have married.
We need we need the men to suffer now. More suffering from men.
Right. So the answer is not more pills. It's less pills.